Tonight, Batgirl falls victim to the anti-vigilante laws that I guess just turn on and off like a light switch. The Teen Titans arrive in Chicago, and it only takes about 6 minutes for them to blow something up. And we are Robin. Bum-bida-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum. I can't promise that will be the last time I make that joke. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 199 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I don't really have a lot to say at the beginning of this except that it is the final week of the month and usually doesn't really matter. Every month kind of blends together. The last week of one month could easily be the first week of another. However, I didn't expect this month to go so long. Let me rephrase that. I didn't expect the episodes of this month to go as long as they did. Every single episode of this month has been like about 2 hours, which is like I'm only covering 12 or 11 comics each week. It shouldn't be that, but I completely forgot that sneak peeks were a thing. Again, rephrase that. I wasn't intending on doing the sneak peeks until I realized that a bunch of them were plot critical things. You needed to read the sneak peek to understand what the hell was going on in the actual story. So that kind of inflated everything to annual length, and now every episode is 2 hours long. However, that should go down next week where I'm only going to have 10 comics and none of them are sneak peeks. So, happy episode 200. I ain't got to do shit. Anyway, in terms of comics coming out this week, let me go ahead and walk you through them in no particular order. We have Batgirl, Gotham by Midnight, Grayson, We Are Robin, Superman, Green Lantern, The Lost Army, Aquaman, The Flash, Justice League 3001, Deathstroke, and Teen Titans. Obviously, out of those, we have a couple new number ones, We Are Robin and Green Lantern Corps, The Lost Army. The latter of which I believe is a mini-series. That's only 6 issues, and We Are Robin does stretch the full 12. So be sure to check those out if you want. Deathstroke, I mean, pretty much all of them are starting new arcs, so it's not even worth me saying which ones are. Yeah, don't really have anything more to say beyond that. Episode 200 will not be anything inherently special unless you're looking for something special, in which case it's going to be a blowout. Everything's going to be different. Definitely watch beginning to end and like, subscribe, comment, share. That's the last one. I always forget that one. When was the last time anyone ever shared like a YouTube video without the express thing of, hey, check out like this 30-second segment in the middle of it? I feel like nobody's ever like, hey, check out this 2-hour-long podcast just for the hell of it. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just the weird one there, but I've never done it. Anyway, I don't know why I'm putting down my own show. Please share. I'm horrible at marketing. I believe that people who fall for advertising in the like simple advertising terms are just like not people. They are just automatons that people... Again, why am I putting down my audience? Audience, I love you. I'm very sorry. I guess I'm just in a mood today. I can't imagine why these episodes hit 2 hours. I'm so succinct with my openings. Anyway, comics, let's start with a thing. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's going to be good. Superman number 41, written by Gene Luen Yang, art by John Romita Jr. So this one doesn't have a sneak peek, technically, but there was a sneak peek story that was included in the Divergence Free Comic Book Day one-shot, so be sure to check that out. This one, however, opens up with, after everything changed, Superman's riding on the back of a jumbo jet, literally outside the plane against the tail fin. But screw that storyline. We go back to before, and we see Jimmy's basically telling Clark, hey, come on, let's go get nachos. He says 5 more minutes, and then he gets a text from a mysterious person saying, hey, turn on the TV, CNN. And he sees CNN is saying that there is some massive big leak, I guess, a distribution of guns being sent out that are highly technologically advanced. And the text says, I know who's doing it. do what I say and you'll have the story of the year. So he gets Jimmy and says, all right, let's go. We're going to do some cool stuff. We cut over to some sort of lab where a scientist type is talking to a general and saying, oh, yes, General, check it out. We got the best 3D printers that money can buy, and they can print any weapon to scale, like, immediately. Our biggest one's as big as a tank, and it can even print tanks. So here, I've got this for you, a 3D printed weapon specifically to your designs. And he tries test firing it, and they're like, all right, let's go ahead and do business. And we see Clark and Jimmy hiding off on the side of the walls, and they're like, still Clark and Jimmy, not Superman. And Jimmy's like, where did you hear about this? And he's like, oh, anonymous tip. Those never work out. Yeah, I know. So they try to get a closer view. They try to move in, and immediately they're found by a guard. Clark tells Jimmy to run, starts going Superman, crushes some guns. Eventually he gets changed into his outfit and immediately starts tearing apart the guards. The scientist tells the general, like, oh, damn, all right, Superman's here. We got to bounce. We're going to go. And hold on to your hat, because when the tank gets in here, it's going to get messy. And then all of a sudden, a giant spider-like mechanical spider 3D printer comes in through a wall, starts attacking Superman. He's managing to hold it off while Jimmy's just got his phone out recording all of it. And he's like, Superman, you good? One of the guards' legs is injured. And Superman's like, all right, we got to get out of here. This robot's sturdier than it looks. So he grabs the guard and Jimmy and starts flying his way out. The guard's like, I was just trying to kill you. Why are you saving me? Jimmy's like, because he's Superman, you idiot. But the spider's coming out. He's coming out full speed. So Superman's like, all right, Jimmy, get the guard away from here as far as you can. Try to aim for a hospital. But then Superman gets grabbed. He sees the printers coming after him, so he unloads his heat vision, which immediately turns into a solar flare. He just starts unloading at a bit higher level, but not a full solar flare. Enough to destroy the robot, though. So time passes. Jimmy's like, hey, Clark, as he's getting changed back in his outfit, maybe warn somebody before you do solar flare. And he's like, that wasn't really a full one. The Justice League has helped me limit it, taper it off, so that way it doesn't take a full 24 hours for my powers to recover. It's going to be a lot faster than that. Meanwhile, Lois comes in and is like, hey, there was this huge explosion downtown and I've already got a lead on it. But then she sees Jimmy's pictures and just be like, oh, never mind. You already know what's up. So she says, oh, well, you got pictures of the man involved. And it's like, yeah, but we don't recognize him. And he's like, oh, you don't? And she pulls out a magic marker and scribbles a mustache on the guy. And it turns out this is a new a new state senator named Leland Norvell. And it was a fake mustache all along. And she's like, yeah, I can't believe you guys were fooled by a fake mustache. I would never be fooled by such an obvious disguise. So yeah, he's running an underground weapons trafficking operation. And she's like, well, since we clearly discovered this together, we can talk about the byline after we write the article. And they're like, you didn't do anything. And then the article gets printed by Clark Kent and Lois Lane. And they're all brought into Perry's office for beers, and it turns out it's root beer because that's Clark's favorite. And they're like, yeah, no, this is great, this is fantastic. Hey, I got a meeting I got to go attend, but you guys come back 7 o'clock. We're going out to a steakhouse, my treat. So at that point, Clark gets a text from the anonymous tip again, and he's like, who are you? You got to tell me now. And he's like, papa, I told you I'm a friend. However, now you scratch my back. There's someone, she's got blue dreadlocks, she's going to be coming into the Daily Planet, turn her over to the authorities. She's crazy, and you shouldn't listen to what she says. And Clark's like, that's not how that works. Tell me who you are. And he's like, oh, but I'm your biggest fan. Check it out. I made a fan site. And Clark opens the fan site, and it's full of pictures of him as Clark and him as Superman, and the transformation in between. And the texter's just like, oh, don't worry, secret's safe as long as you do everything I say. And immediately Clark busts into Jimmy where he's having a nap, and he's just like, Jimmy, I swear to God, did you tell anybody? You better think hard, man. And he's like, what? No, I've been safer than anything else in my life. I've been really, really careful. And Superman's like, okay, maybe this is because I've been solar flaring so often. It's been slowing me down. I'm not faster than the blink of an eye anymore. And he looks over across the hallway and sees the blue dreadlock girl, and she's already talking to Lois, and he's like, crap. All right, Jimmy, I need a favor from you. So he runs over, gets the woman. Her name is Ada Amorgugeta, but apparently she goes by Candiza. So she's talking to Lois, and Clark's just like, hey, Lois, I believe she was asking for me. And Lois is like, hey, don't worry about it. She just wanted to talk to some reporters. And she goes off saying, like, look, we need to get alone. I have some big news, but I need you to talk to me alone about this. And then some governmental figures come in through the door, and they're saying, oh, hey, we have a warrant for your arrest. You'll be coming with us. And Lois is like, hey, get out of here. Run, go. We'll cover you. And Clark's just like, no, Lois, I think it's best that we send her with the authorities without listening to what she has to say. That's very important. Lois is like, what are you talking about, man? But she's being led into the car and being driven away. And Clark texts the number back saying, I did what you asked. Leave me alone. And the number says, oh, we're just getting started. So Clark's pissed off about that. And we see as the woman's being driven away, Candiza is like, you guys aren't with the government. You're not really FBI, are you? And they're like, shut up. So the roof caves in. There is a hooded figure wearing big sunglasses that is on top of it, and it's clearly Clark. He's in an outfit. He grabs hold of the guys with guns, starts tossing them all aside. He manages to get Candiza out of there, hangs off the side, and says, like, oh, don't worry, I'm here to help. So the car crashes. Meanwhile, Jimmy's sitting, waiting in a getaway car. Lois comes up saying, hey, Jimmy, you want to go out for lunch? And he's like, oh, I'm going out to lunch with Clark. And she's like, cool, we'll make it a triple thing. And he's like, please no. So at that point, Clark comes up with Candiza, and he's about to get in the car without his glasses on, and he's like, Clark, maybe put those back on. Lois is in here. He's like, Lois, what are you doing here? And he's just like, are you bleeding, Clark? And look, did you get shot? What are you doing? And Candiza's like, hey, look, they're after me because of what I know. Is the guy you caught, the senator, he's just a pawn. It's so much bigger than you could possibly imagine. We got to drive. And we see that there's shots being fired at the back of the car. And as Jimmy's driving away, voice inside says, Clark, are you still with us? And there's no response. So he yells, Clark again. That's the issue. Okay. So every other book involving Superman has already had his identity exposed. This will say, how does his identity get exposed? And from this issue, seems pretty obvious. I happen to know a few specifics as to where it goes, but obviously somebody knows who he is. He's using that as blackmail. We got to get around that. So, art-wise, I mean, it's JR. You either love it, tolerate it, or hate it. I'm somewhere between the latter two. It's not great. Some of the pages are. The shot with Superman riding on the back of the jet that opens up the book, fantastic. Some of the action pages when he's jumping on the car at the end, not. It's just kind of hit or miss, honestly. But no, for this, I think it is I'm going to say a 7. I feel like there's potential for more, but obviously one of the things in the sneak peek for this one was Lois kind of putting 2 and 2 together. If that gets a bit more involved here, I think I'm going to like it a little more. So we'll see where we get to it, but a solid start for Gene Luen Yang, for sure. Green Lantern Corps, The Lost Army, #1, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Jesús, Saíz. So this one has a little sneak peek from Convergence that begins with some mystery planet. And we have a couple of Green Lanterns, like 4 or 5 of them. They're all waking up here. They have no idea what's happened, where they're at. John is among them. He asks, hey, Ring, where are we at? And the Ring's like, hell if I know, man. Location unknown. And we see that the 5 lanterns we have are Kilowog, John, Aricia Arab, 2-6, and one that I'm unfamiliar with named Zril Virex, who we'll get the power set of that one later. So they're all like, hey, the Ring knows everything about the universe of where we're at. How can it not know where we're at? And John's like, I don't know, but we got to stay prepared. We got to figure out what's up. And his entire inner monologue at this is, to be a good leader, you basically have to be prepared for anything, and you have to treat every obstacle like it is a full-fledged attack and never be caught on the back foot. So they look up in the sky and they see a bunch of weird sort of like moving clouds of some sort of material. And immediately, they just start getting attacked. Immediately, these clouds start attacking. And they're able to break through the little force field of lantern energy. So already they're being attacked in a way much more specific to taking them out than they're used to. But they start going after the clouds. They're doing a decently good job at taking each of them out there. And it's just like, okay, we need backup. Call the rest of the Green Lantern Corps. And as it tries to call, Ring is unable to find anybody else. So it's like, okay, that's a problem. So Kilowog asks whether we're going to run or we're going to fight. And John's like, if we can't get reinforcements, we already lost this one. We got to bail out. We got to try to get away. So he takes the rest of the lanterns, starts trying to fly away. The Zeril, whoever, starts getting a bit too close to one of the clouds. And we see that as John is trying to find anything, power batteries, Salak, coordinates, Ring's unable to do anything. Zeril, her power is, as one of them puts it, morphic empathy, which means as she gets close to someone or something, she's able to morph into their vibe, I guess. So this one takes somewhere of an in-between form of the her normal form, I suppose, and this cloud thing, and as such becomes part of a hive mind. And it's like, oh yes, there's no singular group, whatever. Basically, these things are an antivirus. They came to this planet and they are alien to this place, so these things are just acting as scrubbers so that they can continue to live on this planet. And it's like, okay, well, we don't want any trouble, but it seems like we're not going to be able to talk to them out of it, so we're all alone here. And then a voice from the wooded forest nearby speaks out and says, nope, you're not alone. And out steps Krona, the mad guardian of the universe that is obviously a Green Lantern villain. And he doesn't seem to recognize anything about the Corps, but that's where the sneak peek comes to a close, and we get into issue 1, where John's got Krona in tow now, and the rest of the Lanterns are just blasting their way through these clouds, doing whatever they can. And it's like, yep, it's a racing foreign matter from this universe. Whatever the case, we're foreign matter, so we got to figure out what's going on. And they keep on blasting as best they can. And because they don't have access to their power batteries, they also have to watch their power levels. And they're sitting pretty much all around 50% right now. But they're doing whatever they can to fight through all this. And Kilowog ends up taking some damage to the shoulder, and he's like, yeah, it's no big deal, I'll live, but we got to figure out what we're going on here, because this thing is intent on erasing us from existence. And John just keeps on trying to call anything from the ring, like find Mogo, find the power battery, do anything. And eventually it says, we've got the Green Lanterns around you, and then there's a fourth anomaly nearby. And he's just like, oh, did you hear that? That's something. We got to go. Find that. Lock on. Let's go. So we cut back to John's time in the military. He was pinned down by some insurgents. Everyone's like, oh, we're going to die here. So what are we supposed to do? And John's like, screw that. No negative talk here. You guys go on my signal. And he climbs into a Humvee and shoots out the window and acts as a cover fire for the rest of the team to manage to get away. However, even once the rest of the team is away, he just keeps firing. He just keeps going. And they are trying to, or the insurgents are getting an RPG loaded up, and his team's telling him, like, get out of there. You got to stop. They're going to take you down. And he just keeps on going, saying that the willpower will be enough to see him through. So back to the modern day, he's made constructs of a whole bunch of soldiers. They're shooting at all the clouds, and it does seem to work. It does seem like they bought themselves a few minutes, but it's like, okay, but we're just going to have more attacks. It's going to keep happening. So at that point, John's like, I picked up a signal. We're going to go find it now. Whatever it is, it's going to be something that can help us. So as they're flying through, Krona, who is in tow, is looking at all this, just being like, oh, I would have liked to study these creatures. It's like antibodies in a bloodstream. The universe is like a living being. And John Stewart's just like, Krona, you're just loving this, aren't you? And he's just like, oh, yes, my new friends. This is what I was born to do, to investigate all this stuff. And he basically says, like, I was a guardian. I was a scientist. I wanted to look at multiversal possibilities, other universes, stuff like that. And I got stranded on this planet at one point, but rather than, worry about it, I decided, well, time to go investigate, time to see what's up. So at that point, all the lanterns switch over to a telepathic link between their rings. And John's like, okay, I know everybody has comments. What's up? And Kilowog's like, dude, that's Krona. He sucks. Why are we with him? And 2-6, who's newer to the group, is like, I'm sorry, why do I care? Who's Krona? And they explain Krona's backstory of being the renegade guardian who nearly destroyed the Green Lantern Corps. But he was a lot different the last time they saw him, so they're not sure why he's like he is now. But as they finally approach and reach the coordinates that they were trying to get to, they see these floating red crystals that have completely entombed and encased 3 Green Lanterns. And Aricia goes towards being like, oh, it looks like they're cocooned. And Kilowog's like, whoa, don't touch them. We don't know what that is. Also, they're definitely dead. They don't have a protective like green sheen around them. They're dead. So we see that a floating weapon, a spear, passes by. It's cut through and just like, well, it's able to cut through shields just like the cleaners are. So let's see what this is. And he runs an analysis on the spear, and he sees that the spear is red, and it is made of rage. It is made of the energy. So they also question why the Green Lantern rings aren't seeking replacements if they are, dead inside. But Krona steps forward and just like, oh, hey, your rings, they're connected to your power source. If I have a ring, I might be able to reverse engineer and find a way back to your power battery, as you called it. And John's like, you sure about that, man? He's like, yeah, no, my suit's full scientist. I can manage that entirely. And Kilowog's like, do not give this man a ring, John. And he's like, we don't have many other options. So he cuts off the hand of one of the cocooned dead lanterns, gives him the ability to function through the hand, like Krona plugs into it. And he's like, all right, yeah, see, look, here's a section of space that we're in, fully mapped out, and there is the emotional energy reserve that you're looking for. And everyone else looks at the map and they're like, does anybody know where we're at? Does that look familiar to anybody? But nobody has any clue. And then a bunch more cleaners show up. And before they're even ready to start fighting, before they can do anything, an intertwining of green and red lights come in and just completely knock out all the cleaners. And as they look over, it's Guy Gardner, who simultaneously has green and red rings. And he's like, I'm glad to see you guys. Can someone tell me what the hell is going on? Because last thing I remember, I was not wearing any rings, and then I wake up here and I'm wearing 2 rings. So what's up? And John's like, oh, hey, man, it's good to see you. We're still working on that. It looks like you're the Christmas lantern now. And he's like, yeah, all right. By the way, is that Krona? And John gets into the telepathic thing, and he's like, don't do anything rash, man. We're working it out. We're trying to figure what's up here. So at that point, John and Guy have a little bit of a talk about, like, is this Krona who's amnesiac? Is this Krona from the past? Is he time traveling? Is he just playing with us? What's going on? And John's like, we don't know yet, but we'll try to figure it out. Meanwhile, Zrill, the empathic one, flies up next to Guy and just turns into Guy, like haircut and all. And Guy's like, hey man, what's up? And he's just like, oh, hey, yourself. What are you looking at? And he's just like, what is going on here? Okay, but then at that point, John holds everybody up because they've managed to reach some new thing, and they see it is a giant red pyramid that is giving up incredible waves of rage energy. And he's like, I don't know what this is, but I can feel it. It's more aggression than I've ever felt, and it's aimed right at us. So, who knows what the hell's going on? Obviously, this is kind of similar to what's been going on in the Superman books, where Superman has had his identity outed across all the other books, and then Superman itself is dealing with it in that main title. This one, across all the other Green Lantern books, what few there are, it's been a thing of the Green Lanterns are missing. The entire Corps has disappeared. What happened to them? And then this book is explaining, theoretically, what has happened to them. So, yeah, we'll see what that is. I'm thinking the past that makes the most sense to me. I'm thinking way, way, way back in the past, because Krona's whole thing was like the birth of the universe. So that's my only guess. I have nothing else beyond there. But then that doesn't explain like why the stars are so different, except maybe if we are talking about birth of the universe, it would be. So I don't know. We'll surely get there. All in all, solid issue. Not really going to complain. It's just more of a continuation of the Green Lantern Corps book, except guy's now back in it, so that's nice. So yeah, I'm gonna say this is a 7.5. Don't know why, it just feels right. Grayson, number 9, written by Tom King and Tim Seeley, art by Mikel, Janin. But first, we have a Convergence sneak peek. We open up with matron Helena jumping out of a plane, and in her ears is Grayson and Agent One saying how they hate working together ever since Helena has taken over as the head of Spiral. But she leaps out of the plane, and we cut over to a passenger jet as a kid is talking to Dick, and the kid's wearing a Batman suit or a Batman shirt, and Dick's like, oh, hey, you like Batman? He's like, yeah, when I get scared, I think of him sometimes. He's like, that's great. That's fantastic. But then Dick looks over at this man sitting there off to the side, and he's just like, oh, what are you looking at? You think I'm a terrorist? Because he's got slightly darker skin. And he's like, whoa, hey, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. And the guy charges at Dick, causes Dick to hit the exit door, turn the latch, and the door flies open, sucking the kid out. And so Dick immediately dives out as well. He sheds his suit and jacket he had on, leaving behind the Spiral outfit, and he grabs hold of the kid, and we see Helena, having jumped out of her plane earlier, collides, manages to meet up with Dick, it passes him off a parachute, and all without a hitch. Everything was great. So Dick now has the kid, and they elaborate that apparently this kid was kidnapped, and whoever the kidnappers were didn't know that this kid apparently belonged or was the nephew of Hal Jordan. So he had to be protected in that right, and the guy who charged at Dick on the plane is actually Agent One, aka Tiger, and he is 100% just going to follow these kidnappers to find out what the bigger plan is. And as they land, he's like, or the kid's like, are you Batman? And he's like, oh, no. So we go into issue 1, and we see Dick is trying to contact Batman, saying, hey, you still there? I haven't heard from you in weeks. Please respond. I have finished my mission. I would like to come home. What's going on? Not knowing that Bruce is, of course, dead. So we go on to a railway, and we see it's October of 2014. So this is actually quite some time ago, probably at the time where Dick was also on a train mission. And we see this guy shows up, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm a super spy, and one day these people will cry out, rescue us, and I will answer. And then all of a sudden he gets shot by a gun and then bashed over the head with a stick, and the stick just absolutely kills him. He's dead. And we see that Helena has now taken over Spiral, as stated in the sneak peek. She is met up with by the Psychoco Spy Club, and they're like, yeah, all right, look, we've got something we need to deal with here. First and foremost, a bunch of people. I cannot overstate how many spy organizations are involved in this. We've all had our people following the same leads as Spiral, but they've been slightly behind. And all of our guys have had their heads bashed in with sticks every single time. And you're not following the proper code of spyhood here. There's no reason to be taking out competition like this. So either this is Spiral or it's someone who's implicating Spiral. Either way, stop it or we're going to war. So we go over to a museum in Spain, and Agent One and Grayson jump in. He then has to get changed into the proper outfit. We see a security guard comes around the corner, and Agent One chokes him out and puts him in the Spiral hypnos thing. And we get that Spiral has, under the leadership of Helena, changed its direction from outing the superheroes and getting all of their secret identities to basically protecting their secrets, because they help keep the world safe. So anybody who's threatening to out any superheroes is now going to be subtly protected by Spiral. And we see he gets into his best James Bond outfit, and then we see little clips and montages of all the people as they were following specifically on Dick Grayson's missions. They get bashed over the head by a stick, and it's just like out in the desert there's one, over in Ireland there's one, just reminding you of the specific things that they went through. And so Helena's like, okay, Dr. Netz, can you tell me where Agent 37 is right now? So we go back to the museum, and we see that the mission is that this woman has a necklace with a Kryptonian crystal in the middle of it. And she doesn't know it's special, but if it gets into the wrong hands, it can actually completely give up the full identity of Superman. So they got to get it back. So they're saying, hey, Dick, wait until we have a plan. Do not interact with the target. And he's already right up on her saying, dance with me. And they dance. We see he stealthily takes off the necklace, takes the rock out, puts it in his pocket. And as the music ends, he says, oh, well, that was wonderful, but goodbye. And she's like, wait, but who are you? And he's like, oh, it would have been great, but no, we must remain mysterious. So he shares a kiss with her. And as he's going to leave, she presses her hand to her neck. And she's like, wait a minute, where's my necklace? Thief! And so he starts running off. We go over to Helena, who's flying in a helicopter to some location and still on the phone with Autonuts saying, like, look, I know this isn't Dick. It's someone's really trying to make it seem like him, but it's too clean. It's too obvious that it's him. So it's got to be somebody else, but it has to be somebody who has a deep knowledge of our missions to be able to follow on the trail that closely. And then she gets all wide-eyed and she says, crap, get Grayson on the phone now, but just his comms. So we see him and Agent One are running away. And he gets on the comms with Helena, and Helena's like, hey, don't react, don't say anything. We think Agent One might be compromised. Get the crystal, get away from him, and we'll meet up at whatever rendezvous drop point. And he's like, oh, God, what is wrong with you people? And Agent One's like, what? And he just turns around, backhands Agent One, knocks him out for a second, and says, yeah, well, I'm sorry, but that's what Bats always used to say whenever you're listening to strange voices in your head, you're probably going crazy. So, or stop listening to the strange voices in your head. So as Agent One is down and out, we see a man with a stick is approaching. And as he is coming up close, another stick comes out of nowhere and bashes that guy in the head and kills him. And we see that was another spy. So as Agent One sits up, he's got a dead spy next to him, security guards coming up, and he goes, Dick Grayson, you are an idiot. And that's the issue. It's great. It's good. I like it. Adding on this little thing of, there might be a leak. There might be someone working against, specifically trying to frame Dick Grayson. I'm down with it. I really don't have anything horribly bad to say, except there is one page in here that I feel like was just kind of meme bait, or like trying to bait something, where as Dick is getting into his James Bond outfit, he's talking about how hard it is to get the bow tie lined up right. And he turns to Tony, Agent One, after he has fully gotten into his outfit, and he says, am I straight? It's a full page thing. I feel like it's just trying to bait people to be like, oh yeah, you want to get all outraged over this? You want to do that? It's like, okay, fine, whatever. Beyond that, the rest of the issue is fine. Art is good, writing's clever. I'm going to say this is definitely a solid 8 for me, and will only improve over time, hopefully. Batgirl number 41, written by Brendan Fletcher and Cameron Stewart, art by Babs Tarr and Joel Gomez. But first things first, we have the sneak peek, which was a part of Convergence, and it's just like a Scott Pilgrim-esque sort of thing. We got Batgirl, who's trapped in an escape room of some sort with video game motifs, and apparently the two pair of villains called Co-op, who are very video game based. They were followed that 3 people apparently died here, and there's a whole signal or whatever. They're trying to find any relation between the victims, and then all of a sudden laser grids start turning on. Babs has to start flipping through them. Her hair gets singed, and we see Frankie is her girl in the chair now, and she's like, I can't find anything that linked these people together. And Babs says, well, maybe check everything about them having to do with video games, because this has a very video game motif. We then see that there's an electrified floor section, and then she's able to... I really don't understand this part. She looks at the floor, sees that certain panels aren't electrified, does some sort of math in her head to come to the realization of, I can jump between these, and then does so. And as she gets to a final room, which is a pillar over top of a bunch of spikes, we see that there's a woman up there who's screaming out for help. Babs tries to grapple up there. Grapple doesn't stick, so she has to do a triple jump off of some spinning Beyblade-looking things. And as she gets up, she rescues the woman, and we get the backstory that she's some tech CEO and her other co-founders wanted to take video games to the next level by using real-life people, Extreme Warrior style. And then she said no, and so they kidnapped her and put her in a room anyway. It turns out that she knows that one of them has a weakness for putting cheat codes into games, so she uses her memory to think back to all the arrows that she passed by as they came up there and puts them in on a D-pad and gets a big mallet power-up, and she uses that to bust through a wall and beat the crap out of Co-op. And that's the opening. That's just the sneak peek of things we'll kind of get up to. So we actually pick up issue 41 with a broken down, beaten up mansion. And Babs is inside because she's gotten a couple of hits saying like, oh yeah, there's a drain on the power grid or something. And as she goes in deeper, she sees that there are some cultists who are worshipping the AI from the last arc that the hookup app was taken over by. And they're like, oh, she was our glorious digital queen, and we will use this weird... I don't even know what you call it, a stasis grid or something like that, to allow her body to recorporealize into physical form. And then because they're a cult, they also have a bunch of missiles to purify the world and all that. So Batgirl jumps in, immediately starts kicking all their asses. They have guns. She uses batarangs to take them out. And as she's in the middle of about to beat up the main cultist dude, in comes new Batman, the big robot version. And he's like, oh, stand down. You are illegally gathering, blah, blah, blah. So he comes in, starts attacking all of the people. And she's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Batman. Also, you're under arrest. But then one of the cultists tries hitting him with a chair. It doesn't go over well. So he has to turn around and attack the cultist, giving Babs enough time to get out of there. So she gets home, she talks to Frankie, and it's just like, yeah, he was awesome, he was huge, I think he was a robot, RoboCop vibe going on. And Frankie starts yawning, she's not used to the long nights and all that, and Babs is like, hey, you can still back out, you don't got to join in on it, really will ruin your life. And she's like, no, by the way, I came up with my code name, I want you to call me, and before we get the code name, in comes Jim Gordon, I should say, and he's brought coffee and donuts. And as he comes in, Babs looks at him and is like, oh my god, you shaved your mustache. Please put it back on. So we see that he takes her out for like a daddy-daughter thing across town, and it brings him back to some old childhood memories and whatnot. And she's like, you're just trying to butter me up. You got some bad news, or you got something you need to tell me because you're going through all these old places where we grew up at. And he's like, yeah, all right, look, I got this promotion, I got a new job, and it's kind of the reason the mustache is gone, and I can't keep it a secret from you. Look, I'm Batman. And she's like, I'm sorry, what? And so we get a skip forward. He explains it all, and he's just like, yeah, I know, it's a lot to take in, but like, yes, I am the new Batman. And Babs says, actually, this is kind of perfect, because I need to tell you something as well. And before she can finish, he says, well, hold on. Before that, let me be clear. I'm telling you this because, A, being Batman is going to be a risk. After all, I am taking down all of those vigilantes. Anybody who wears a mask besides me is absolutely getting their ass hauled into court, because that is one of my new prerogatives here. That is something I absolutely have to do. Also, if you were to drop a bomb on me the size of leading a double life for years without telling me, I wouldn't be able to handle it. I would be absolutely furious. So I didn't want to do that to you, so I'm upfront with you and telling you that I'm Batman. So what did you want to tell me, dear? And he's just like, nothing. So we come back over to that stasis field thing. Some electricity starts forming. It forms into a female human body, and then it walks out the door. We then go to an arcade where Frankie and Babs are hanging out, and Babs can't tell Frankie because it's supposed to be a secret anyway. So she's just like, yeah, my dad's got a new job. It's a whole thing, whatever. Turns out they're also looking for work because the Hook app that Frankie worked at just totally went under. So she mentions that Luke Fawkes is buying up property in the area, and Babs is like, okay, I might have an in on that one. But then all of a sudden the arcade completely blacks out. They look down the street and they see this humanoid electric figure floating near them. So it starts blowing up a car, and Babs is like, okay, I gotta go change. So she heads to the bathroom, changes into her Batgirl outfit, comes out, and she's like, hey, hold on, wait a minute. And then she flashes back to Batman preparing an energy containment trap to contain Superman's villain of Livewire. And just like, yes, and her real name is, and then Babs says it out loud of, Leslie. Your name is Leslie Willis. You're Livewire. You were put in jail in like a couple months ago. You went to Strikers. And Livewire is just like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about all. I was 100% amnesiac, but now I remember who I am, and now I'm pissed off. So thanks for that. So she immediately becomes the Livewire we all know. She starts attacking Babs, or is about to, when Frankie comes in and just body checks her. She gets a burn on her arm, and Babs is like, no, seriously, don't do that. I can handle this. So she throws a few batarangs or whatever at Livewire. It expands into some sort of foam. And as they're about to continue their fight, in comes Jim Gordon Batman in the big bat suit. He fires off a shot at Livewire. She decorporealizes into electricity, and Batman says, all right, APB, put it out for Livewire. She's going to be around here somewhere. And as for you, Batgirl, you're under arrest. End of issue. It's fine. It's a perfectly solid start. I mean, this is when it was Jim Gordon becoming Batman over in the Batman book. This is kind of the one book that I thought was going to do the most with it. I mean, it is literally the cover of the trade, so I like that this is a strange power dynamic going on here, but I also am a little bit let down because I know that we're not going to be able to do too much in this book. Like, it all kind of has to happen over in Batman. There's not going to be like a major status quo shift in this one. So I'm curious to see what they do with it, but I'm kind of just like immediately that thing where he's like, here's all the reasons you can't tell me you're Batgirl. Is like, okay, well, that could have been something you could have stretched out into at least a couple issues, but sure, we'll just make it all soap opera-y up front. Visuals are good, writing's good, Livewire's interesting as a villain, but we've always dealt with like tech and electricity stuff, so it makes sense here. I'm going to say this is a 7.5. Sounds right to me. Aquaman number 41, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Trevor McCarthy. So, got the sneak peek coming in before this one, set some time period ahead from now. We see an entire fishing town or some other sort of town has been set afire. Tons of people are dead, and what seems to be an Atlantean army is moving in, basically saying he's probably already thread. He's hiding, most likely. We got to check out every place, see if we can find him. And then all of a sudden, Aquaman, missing the orange shirt, wearing more of a, I'm just going to say Jason Momoa style. Like, that's kind of what we're going for here. He's stabbed one of the soldiers through the chest and says, I told you, leave me alone. You should have listened to me instead of attacking this town. So he's ready to attack all these soldiers, and he starts going through. And he basically says, like, why are Atlanteans all so stubborn? You know, Atlantis is crumbling down. I never wanted the crown to begin with. And we see that he's basically trying to protect what few of these people in the town are left because he feels responsible for them. And he's like, oh, you're willing to kill everyone around just to flush me out. I'm not gonna allow you to do that. And he's managed to take most of them out. He's like, all right, I got to get out of here. I've been sticking to land, but now they've managed to find me there. So yeah, this isn't good. So he starts trying to run. He makes his way through even more of them. Apparently now he has ice powers. He makes some giant icicles that shoot down some ships out of the sky. And he says, if you guys keep this up, if you strike at the surface, this is going to get even worse for you. And then he brings down lightning bolts and yells, do you hear me? Your king is pissed. So as he stands there with just this incredible power, we see narration boxes basically saying, of course he escaped again. I wouldn't think anything otherwise. But, you know, all these powers that he's got now, they're only going to spare him for so long. And when he has nowhere else to run, he will answer for his betrayal. And on that day, Aquaman will die. And we see the person saying all this, sitting on the throne, is Mera, who is surrounded by a bunch of creatures I don't recognize. And I think Aqualad is in one of them. So that's the teaser. That's the sneak peek. The book itself, is a little, I don't want to say confusing, but it is told in the past and the future, or now maybe, and it doesn't tie up anything by the end. So we open up in St. Louis, where a bunch of people are just enjoying their day, and then all of a sudden, underneath the St. Louis Arch, comes a giant temple that is formed from nothing and has this weird black tentacle, oily substance coming out of it, and it starts grabbing people, starts dragging them back into the temple. And Aquaman's narrating, basically saying, like, I understand what it's like to live in one world and then all of a sudden it be torn apart and blah, blah, blah. He's just relating to how it's somewhat similar for him. And as he comes in, he's wearing the new armor at this point, and he's saying, like, oh yes, I'm standing here against the Bane field, is what he calls it. And he's like, oh, and as I'm standing here, the blessings are holding true for now. But he calls into this temple as the doors are still open, and he says, all right, come on out, whoever's in there, let's get this done with now. And as he goes in, we see that he's been attacking with this new sword of his, but he's able to activate the sword, and it turns into a full trident mode, so it's a multi-weapon now. Then we cut back to the past, where Aquaman, Mera, and a couple other people have heard rumors of parts of the ocean being poisoned. And so he's going off to find out what that's about. And he's like cracking jokes to Mera, and Mera's like, this is not the time to be cracking jokes, I guess. And he's like, yeah, Flash makes it look so easy, but there's really a timing to it I haven't quite nailed yet. And as they end up getting to this poison part of the ocean, we see another temple that looks very similar. And one of the tentacles reaches out, grabs hold of Aquaman, and it immediately pierces his armor, and it feels like it's completely just tearing apart his arm. He says he could feel his cells dying off where it touched him. So Mera uses her water magic, keeps all the tentacles contained, keeps them all stuck in one place. And they're like, yo, that temple was big, but it didn't look fully complete. It looks like it's part of a greater structure that's maybe trying to come through. And they realize they got to do more investigation here. So cut back to now. Aquaman's punching his way through the temple. He's fighting through all this. And he's like, look, this is literally what they were built and bred to do. No friendship, no love, but this is... I still feel kind of bad about doing all this, but this is all they've ever known. So he's once again using his new powers, ice powers, stuff like that. And he manages to encase one of the people in ice, and the guy's able to speak, and he leans forward and says, like, oh yes, the fallen king, wielding an old monarch's power. We have legends about you. Our children from our world burn you in effigy, and you aren't going to destroy us because you don't look like you're able to be the ravager of worlds. And Aquaman's like, are you serious right now? And he goes over to one of the temple doors, cracks it open with his trident, and uses its electricity power, and it causes the dude frozen in ice to just turn into ash, along with the entire rest of the temple. And he's like, that literally took seconds. That was just seconds from me doing it, but like, how long until I have to kill all of them again? So we cut back to the past again. Aquaman's getting his arm looked at by a doctor, and they're like, okay, theories, what do we got? And they're like, well, there have been reports of this happening all over the globe, and it's getting bigger and more powerful. Perhaps this is something that has been happening before, and we've just missed it until it got to this big of a scale. And in comes a voice off to the side. They've wheeled in Vulko, full-on Silence of the Lambs treatment, strapped up to a board. And he's like, ah, yes, King Arthur, you know that I remain loyal to Atlantis and all that stuff. But I've studied your findings, and you need to think of this in the same way that you surface dwellers think of dipping a toe into the water to test if it's too cold or not. This other world, this corrupting force, it was just dipping its toe in for a while, but now it is starting to come in full force. It has grown adjusted to us, and it's ready to take the plunge. And they're like, okay, well, it's poisoning us, so that sounds like an extermination. And Arthur turns around and he's like, whatever it is, I will find a way to stop it. So we cut back to now. Aquaman comes up on land to St. Louis, and they're all thankful, like, oh, hey, Aquaman, we love you, thank you. And he's like, oh, God, I can't keep this up. This is literally too much now. And then out of the water comes a bunch of Atlantean cruisers coming to attack him. And they're like, oh, throw down your weapon, you're under arrest, lethal force, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, we all know why you're coming after me, and I am not going anywhere with you until your queen is willing to talk it out in a civil manner. And so they open fire on him, and he uses the final power of his trident that we know of, which is teleportation. He's just able to teleport right out. So we got back to then. Mara is standing out on the balcony, and she's like, hey, this is dangerous. You shouldn't be doing this. You're king of Atlantis. You should send out other people to go investigate this. You shouldn't be out in the fray like that. And he's like, that's never been who I was, and you know it. Like, we've always been going out and do that stuff. But I need you to stay behind now because this city needs a queen to guide it. And she's like, wait a minute. That sounds like a proposal to me. And so they hug and they kiss and they have a nice little moment. And we see where Aquaman teleported off to. He's in the Amazon. He walks into some other temple, and he's like, it's been 3 months since I've seen Atlantis. I've even been there. I have anywhere that I can call home, but I promised Mara I would do whatever it took to save our people, even if it meant destroying the other world. And I could just completely decimate this place, destroy it, take it to ash and all that. But, and as he walks into the temple, we see a whole bunch of people that are hanging out in here. And he's like, I am letting the enemy survive because I have to. Like, he doesn't give an explanation. He's just like, every minute that they're here, it is threatening Atlantis more and more. No wonder she's pissed. So, yeah, I mean, I like the parallels. I like the idea of when we see him getting all kissy and huggy with Mara there. In the past, in the present, we see that she is the one who is threatening him and putting him out at risk of being under arrest. I like how the moment that he kills one temple, we see that he's letting another one live. There's a weird dichotomy to it. And I think that it's basically just going to come from the idea of, is Aquaman defender of all life, or is he defender of Atlantis, or even just Earth as a whole? Like, there is this trade-off here. I like it. I think that this issue bounces just a few too many times, and it doesn't give enough answers as to what's happening in the latter section, but this is only the first issue of the run, so I guess I can give it a little bit of slack. I think it's still probably going to be a 7.5 for me. It doesn't come off as strong enough to be an 8, but it's a good start, and at the very least, I am not immediately turned off by the idea of Aquaman v Atlantis in a different way than before. So, here's hoping it works. We Are Robin #1, written by Lee Bermejo, art by Jorge Corona, Rob Haynes, and Khary Randolph. However, first is the sneak peek, which is set just... Honestly, I feel like before everything else. It's not a lead-in, but it's its own separate thing. We see a bunch of people that I will eventually get the names of, but in this first issue, it's not going to come to me. And we see they're being contacted by someone called The Nest, and they're basically being recruited or enlisted or whatever else. One is doing some spray painting, the other is stopping some muggers from attacking a guy, and one of them that's going by the name of Rico, R-I-K-O, is down by a docks taking pictures of some people with guns and helicopters and whatnot, and is asking for backup. So we see a bunch of different people from different walks of life. One of them is in a suburban home, one of them is in a football field, one is working on a bike, and they're all in a text chat together, basically saying, hey, where are you tonight? Check this out. Let's do that. When is the D-Chain come by? And they're just kind of trying to organize to see if anybody can get down to the docks and help out this Rico person. But only one or two of them ends up being able to. One of them is constantly stuck on the train. And as they are trying to figure out how to get down there, we see Rico, who is clearly dressed in some sort of Robin outfit, is leaping across the rooftops trying to get closer to this gang and whatever it is they're doing. So backup eventually shows up. A couple other people arrive at the meeting, and the Nest is still just doing like enigmatic things, saying like, we are this, we are not punks, we are this, with all this other stuff. And the issue basically ends with the Robins, because that's of course who they are, throwing a duffel bag into the middle of the gang. They end up shooting it. It's a smoke bomb, and then they come out of the smoke ready to attack. So issue 1 proper starts off with Duke Thomas. And for anyone who doesn't remember Duke Thomas, he was in Zero Year briefly, but more recently in Endgame. He was a kid who was basically kidnapped by the Joker and forced to recreate the crime alley scene where his parents then got Jokerized. And according to this, they are still missing. Nobody knows where they are. And Duke has been in foster homes ever since then, which has only been a couple of months at this point. But we see he is currently being beaten up down on the playground. And turns out he was flirting with somebody's sister, and he just got a smart mouth on him. So he's like, oh yeah, she just liked my cologne. It's better than you, smelling like onions and BO. So he keeps on getting attacked by this kid. But Duke eventually manages to get up on his own, and he starts doing some very vaguely parkour things, jumping up on fences, getting behind people, and he's able to hold his own in the fight here. So it's 1-on-3, and he's actually doing a decent job at it. And he's basically saying, like, I know I shouldn't be into the adrenaline rush like this, but I love it, and I can't stop anymore. So as he's knocking these guys out, the one girl that all this was over is standing off to the side, and he's like, why did you tell your brother? You knew he would kick my ass. And he's like, oh, I saw you talking to Diane, or whatever her name is, Donna. And it's just like, oh, Donna's just friends. We were looking for my parents. And then it turns out one of the guys was not as knocked down as he thought he was, managed to get a hold of this weapon, hits Duke in the head, and now he's knocked out with blood on his face. And at that point, the cops show up, start arresting everybody, but a mysterious figure walks by, takes a picture of Duke, and then walks off. So we then cut to a flashback of Duke being rescued by Batman during the Endgame storyline. And when he comes to, he is in a seemingly police office, but it turns out that it is the office of Dr. Leslie Tompkins, who is looking over Duke's file, and it's basically saying, like, look, I don't know, you're a bright kid, you know all this stuff going on. Why are you acting out so hard? Why are you getting into fights like this? And he throws down, like, trying to be debonair and suave about it, and he's just like, save it, I don't want to hear it. Your foster parents don't want any more of this stuff going on here. You're being put back in the system. Like, why are you know that your parents are going to come home, and do you think they're going to want to see you like this? And he's like, are my parents going to come home? Because it doesn't feel like anybody is out there looking. And she points out that there's huge homeless populations post Endgame, people who are like full-on amnesiacs that just need reminding of who they were, and every effort's being put in, but yeah, they are spread thin. So we see that the Robins are talking in their group text, and the Nest is basically saying he's being moved out of the Tompkins office to a new location. He's going to be there in half an hour, and he will immediately try to bolt. So if we don't get him now, it's not going to work out. And the Robins are like, oh, that's not a very good window. Is anyone able to keep up on that? So we see Duke has been moved to a new foster home as a favor to Leslie Tompkins. It's this woman. I doubt she's ever going to come up again, but her name's Joanne Dawson. She's already got a couple other kids in here. Her husband's on disability, and so they use these foster home checks basically as income. And as soon as he arrives, Joanne's just like, all right, I'm not going to take any crap for you. You're going to help me with the kids in the morning, and then I need someone to help clean up this bathroom. And Duke's like, I am not going to do either of those things. He's thinking this. He's not outwardly saying it. But he's just like, yeah, no, I'm definitely going to be out of here before anyone even has a chance. And he's shown the bedroom. He immediately sees a window with a fire escape outside. He's like, well, that's easier than not. So as soon as Joanne leaves, he dips, he bails out. And he's basically just saying, like, yeah, I can't just sit around and wait for other people to bail me out. That's why I'm going out and I'm doing something. I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to find my parents on my own. So he manages to run down an alleyway. The Robins just miss him, and they're like, all right, I guess we'll try to keep up with him. So Duke makes his way down to a subway station, jumps over, and starts walking down the rails. And as he does so, he comes across two guys who are talking about how the boss doesn't like other people bringing their food because the guy's got a burrito on his own. And he follows them until they eventually come up into this underground community of either displaced or homeless people or something like that. And we see this guy up top. He's got big ears, very mousy sort of exterior, and he's giving a monologue, basically saying the upper side of Gotham has turned away from us. They are no longer on our side or anything like that, so therefore we will take them down, remind them that their foundations come from the underground, and our attacks and blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And they basically say that the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attack the Hall of Records, because that will throw them into chaos. But before he can continue, this mousy guy gets a sniff of Duke's cologne, and he's like, oh, there's an outsider here, someone who hasn't been initiated. We got to suss him out. So Duke starts running away, and all these people start coming after him. He knows he's in deep right now. He could actually be killed. And he's like, oh, I don't know what to do. I've got no parents, no help. And as he gets grabbed, something hits the guy who grabbed him in the head and says, hey, you ran with Batman. You ran with the Bat. You better represent. And he says, who are you guys? And they say, oh, well, haven't you heard? We're Robin. And then we get one last final thing of somebody is watching all of this happen through little bat-themed surveillance cameras, and the narration says, yeah, the city has... so many people have chosen to protect this city. It only makes sense that eventually this city would choose a few to step up on their own. And that's what I'm doing. I'm causing these kids to join in on this Robin thing, on this Robin identity, and they will help save the day, because it's not going to be this soulless, dark place in the future. Looking ahead, I see Gotham in color. And he opens up this closet and shows all, like, dozens of different Robin outfits and costumes of various different types. So that's it for issue 1. It's good. I like issue 1 more than I like the sneak peek, and what that comes down to is it's the same issue as a lot of team books and things like Legion of Superheroes, where you're introducing me to a lot of new characters all at once. And while theoretically there is a way for me to keep track of who each of those ones are, it's not coming naturally. It's not something that is just an easy, understandable part of the book yet. Maybe as the characters get developed, maybe there's only like 4 or 5 of them that we got to really buckle down on. If I look at the image of the ones that's shown up, I see 5 of them there, 4 of them, not counting Duke. So maybe it'll be easy enough to remember that all those teammates' numbers. But as it stands now, it's just a little bit out there, and it feels like I'm supposed to start learning these now, and I haven't been given enough to do so, but we'll figure it out as time moves on. As it stands, I think this one is very well done. It's a good intro here. I don't know what the context is for why, like, Damian is not, like, it would make more sense if Damian were still dead, but the fact that there is still a Robin leads me to believe why do we need a team of Robins, you know? But maybe we'll get context. I'm going to say 7. That's where I'm feeling. Deathstroke number 7, written by Tony S. Daniel and James Bonny, art by Tony S. Daniel. So first and foremost, we have a sneak peek, which is kind of just skippable, but it does set up things. We've got somewhere in the South Pacific, Deathstroke's climbing a cliff. He's talking about the last arc, saying how, yeah, I fought my dad. His body was never found, so he's probably out there, and Rose and Jericho have left as well, so I'm all alone, and I haven't quite recovered from the mental and emotional pain of it all. And then all of a sudden, he gets attacked by Tim Drake, Red Robin, and the rest of the Teen Titans. And he's almost knocked off this cliff face. And he's like, yeah, I am younger, I am more fit, I've got my eye back, but because of that, I'm a little off balance, and that is enough to get someone like me killed. So he starts fighting against them. And there's Bunker, there's Wonder Girl, all the Teen Titans show up, Beast Boy, and he's just doing his best to get through all of them. And as we see, he manages to get slashed up by Beast Boy in the form of a panther or something like that. In steps Victor Ruiz, who is the leader of the Dead Bastards group that he now quote-unquote works for. And it's revealed that all this is just a training room. It's all just holograms and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, well, it seems like everything else is working at peak efficiency, and your reflexes are better than they have been, but still, it looks like you're not 100% at your absolute best here. And he's like, yeah, that's why I ended up with claws on my shoulder. Thanks. So as they're talking and saying how he's a valuable agent of the team, all of a sudden an alarm starts going off, and they say something is flying towards the island we're on at an incredible rate. Never mind, it's already here. And so they send out Slade to go investigate what it is, and this voice starts talking to him, saying like, ho, I am not a mere mortal, and I could kill you where you stand. And Deathstroke's like, cool, prove it, do it, bro. And he's like, no, we have need for your lethal means. The Pantheon requires you. And it starts raining gold coins, and he says like, you will be rewarded amply. And Deathstroke just pulls out some guns and says, all right, seriously, face to face, or I'm not doing this. And he's like, fine, fair enough. And this giant flaming sword just comes out of the sky and lands right in front of it. And he says, this is a sword that I, Hephaestus, have made. I have forged it for you, and you will use it to kill a god. And that's the bait. So next, the issue literally just rolls directly into it, where we are now on Themyscira. We're not on Themyscira yet. We're still training on the normal island. Slade is making his way, trying to fight with this sword, and Hephaestus is like, yeah, you have to master the sword. It's going to be a part of you. I made it specifically for you, so you got to get used to it. And apparently, like, the weight and the shape, it changes depending on Slade's thoughts, but it's not something he has full control over yet. So in comes a bunch of, as far as I could tell, demons from Hephaestus who come in and try to attack, and Slade's just throwing the sword around, and it's sloppy at first, but there is so much power just coursing through Deathstroke that he's like, oh, this feels good. And the sword, it has a mind of its own. It's filled with hatred and rage, and it wants to kill. And Hephaestus is impressed. He's like, not many people can handle a sword of this caliber, but Deathstroke is Deathstroke, so he of course can. So once everything is said and done, Hephaestus is like, well, a little predictable in your movements, but beyond that, yeah, no, I think you're up to snuff. And he's like, yeah, you'll express gratitude for me to give you the opportunity, because if you survive this, you'll be a very rich man. And Deathstroke says, all right, yeah, I'm good to go do this, but there's something I got to go do first. And we see that he makes his way to, as far as I could tell, a safe house in California. And as he goes in, he sees that there's bloodied bandages, no older than a day old, and a bloodied sword on the wall. And someone attacks him. He blocks it with the sword, and we see it's Rose. She's managed to crash in one of Deathstroke's houses, and she's cut her hair. Deathstroke's like, hey, so what's going on? You settled into my house? And she's like, yeah, thanks, I guess. Am I supposed to thank you for that? And he's like, no, I want to help you. And Jericho, are you still in contact with Jericho? And she's like, yes, I am. Stay away from both of us if you want to help. And he's like, oh, come on, that's a little unfair. And she's like, no, it absolutely is not. He wants nothing to do with you. I don't want anything to do with you. You can't just put a bandage over all this. And he's like, all right, fair enough. An airplane lands, and he's like, that's my ride. Here's a letter. Just give this to Jericho if you see him. And she opens it up, she reads it. We don't get to see what's in it, but she just sets it on fire. She lights it and just walks away. So now we cut to Themyscira, Paradise Island, and Hephaestus has dropped Deathstroke off and said, okay, you are here to kill the Titan Lapetus. I'm going to say Lapetus. He is the god of mortality. He is locked in the depths of Tartarus, where there's a hidden entrance on this island to it. And I'm personally not the one who wants this done, but there is another god on Olympus who does. I am acting as an intermediary, and Deathstroke's like, so who's the other person? It's like, nah, you're not going to get that information. But they want Lapetus dead because they think it's going to be some plot against Olympus. So go for it, buddy. And then he soars off. Deathstroke says, all right, should be quick and easy. Just get there on the island. The sword will lead the way, no problem. And then he's lost for 45 minutes, and he has no idea where he is. And the sword's not really leading him as well as he would have hoped. We see some Amazons are patrolling across the island. He has to hide. And then all of a sudden, the sword actually does start reacting properly. But it spawns in a floating projection of Hephaestus's head. And he's like, dude, I've been watching you through the sword. You've been walking around for an hour. Why are you not... Like, are you lost? Is that what's going on? Deathstroke's like, no, I've been scouting the island and memorizing every ridge and valley. That's just recon. Hey, here's the door. I found it. Go away now. So he slashes into Tartarus. He steps inside. And Hephaestus is like, hey, yeah, I'm going to stick around as a floating head to give you hints and trips and all this other stuff that you might come across in here. And then in come a whole bunch of demons who's like, oh, immortal, we must attack him. And the sword, without Deathstroke really swinging it himself, is just slicing through these demons. And he's like, the sword's controlling me. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like this sword anymore, Hephaestus. And he's just like, nah, don't fight against it. It's becoming a part of you. It's better that way. And as they make their way deeper into Tartarus, they come across a figure. They believe it might be Lepidus, but it turns out it's just a statue. And it's like, is the statue Lepidus? And he's like, no, the statue is in the likeness of Apollo. It's a sun god. This is just trickstery god stuff. Don't worry about it. But nah, you got to get out of here. If he's enough to play a trick on us in this form, then we definitely got to bail. And Deathstroke's like, but what if he's in the statue? Like, how would he get out otherwise? He's got to be in the statue. And then the statue's eyes start to glow. And he's like, I told you, he's in the statue. So he goes in, he slashes at the statue. Hephaestus yells, no, you don't know what you're doing, man. And all of a sudden, the statue explodes. And I'm talking about, like, high velocity. A whole bunch of debris just starts shooting past Deathstroke, rips right past him. And he's like, okay, Hephaestus, what did I just do? Now, Hephaestus is gone. He's no longer answering the call. And he's like, okay, that's a problem. And then all of a sudden a voice behind says, oh my God, do you know what you've just done? You will pay for that. You've unleashed a force that will destroy Themyscira. Surrender or die. And we see standing in the doorway of Tartarus is Wonder Woman, of course. Sure. I mean, I like Tony S. Daniels' art style. It's very good. I will say I remember the last arc ending very unsatisfactorily, and I don't feel like this is really answering anything about that. It just kind of ends with the thing of being like, yeah, don't worry about any of that other stuff. We're done with that now, and we're moving on. And fair, if that's the case, but I feel like if I were to reread this and just like have it all in one batch, I'd be really let down or confused between issues. So yeah, it's a good issue in its own right. I think it definitely makes more sense than like the previous 2 or 3, but I don't know. It's just part of the serialized nature, I guess. I kind of am hung up over the fact we didn't get the payoff for that stuff. So in this specific issue, I think it's good. I think it's setting up a cool arc. Deathstroke's going to kill gods. Like, yes, that seems exactly in line with just the badass kind of guy Deathstroke is that he might take on a contract from a god. Why not? So 7.5, I guess, is where I'm kind of leaning on this. Probably would have been an 8 if I felt like it actually was continuing on this overarching story rather than just being a whole new fresh start. So, yeah. The Flash, number 41, written by Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, art by Brett Booth. So we've got the sneak peek to open up with, which this trade inconveniently puts in the middle of the book. Took me some time to figure that one out. And it's basically just, we left Barry Allen in a state where his life was in flux. Patty was leaving him. How do we come out of that? And it's just saying that now he is living with Pied Piper, Hartley Rathaway, and just as a roommate situation, Pied Piper's still dating Captain Singh, or Director Singh, my bad. And we see that, he's out, he's doing his typical Barry Allen stuff. Central City is such a nice place to live because the Flash is there. And we see Barry manages to save this woman from getting hit by a bus, just as normally Barry. He uses super speed, obviously, but he's dressed as Barry. The narration over top of all this says essentially the history of Barry and who he is and what he does, but it views it through this lens of, doesn't he suck? Like, he does all these good things. He's such a goody two-shoes. How I hate him. So we get the stuff of how he's good at his job because he's very obsessive, detail-oriented, but it all comes from his father being taken in and blamed for his mother's death. And he's doing his job when all of a sudden there is some costumed guy downtown, and the Captain Daryl is saying, hey, Barry, just stay behind. We don't need you on this one. And then he runs out anyway. And he transforms into Flash. And as far as I'm aware, this is a new costume for Flash, where it's got yellow/gold on the eyes. Like it's an eye mask now. And I don't like it. So there's that. We see it's some guy who's got, I don't know, running powers or goop on his feet. Really doesn't say, but he's robbing some sort of bank. And Flash immediately comes in, stops some civilians getting hurt, and then punches guys out in the face. So while that's done, we see up on a rooftop is some people watching, and they're saying, like, yes, pay attention to him, this Barry Allen, because that is your task. And then we see that it's a bunch of people. I don't think any of them have names yet, except for the center one, which is Professor Zoom, a.k.a. Thawne, has taught you everything you need to know. Now go hunt him. So that's that. We then cut back to issue 41, where we see soon Barry's facing down this guy in huge green armor, and he's like, oh, you mess with Central City, you mess with the Flash. And then guy throws a punch, and Flash says, ha, a punch, it's so slow, you're so dumb. But as he's saying, like, slow, he slows down to a freeze frame, and we see out steps Thawne as Reverse Flash, or Professor Zoom, I guess, saying like, oh, you think you've seen everything in this town, but you haven't seen me. Right now, I could just choke the life out of you. I'd do it right now. I've looked forward to it for so long, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to be patient, because I'm going to destroy everything you hold dear first. And he just manages to push Flash ever so slightly differently, so that the guy throws a punch and it lands. And he's like, I managed to punch the Flash. Fantastic. So we cut back to a little bit earlier, aka now, and Barry's taking a shower. One of Pied Piper's rats sneaks into the room, and he freaks out over it. And Pied Piper's like, oh, sorry, do you have a rat phobia? You got to understand, they got a bad rap ever since the Black Plague. And he's like, no, I just didn't expect them in the house. And there's this weird stare down of like Barry's eyes glowing and the rat's eyes glowing as they stare at each other. I don't think the rat's a villain, but whatever. And he says, hey, you should probably get going. You're going to be late for work. And Barry's like, oh, I got time. First, I got to take care of some family stuff. And we see he goes to Iron Heights, and he goes to talk to his dad. And same old. The dad's saying, Barry, you got to stop trying to get me out of here. Go live your life. It's not a blah, blah, blah. But Barry now comes at this time saying, hey, I got something new. I got a name now. And he's like, oh, yeah, what's that? And he says, Thawne. And immediately Barry's dad is like, why did you say that name? Don't say that name. Don't ever say that name. Have you told anyone about this? And he's like, no. He's like, don't ever say that name again. I killed your mom. I definitely did it. She was a bitch. Screw you, Barry. And just like walks off. And Barry's like, what in the hell was that about? So as he's walking away, we see he meets up with someone. I don't think they even give him a name, but he's got an arm coated in playing cards and a tattoo of a spade on his face. And he says, hey, the professor sends his regards. The man in yellow. It's Professor Zoom. Let's be clear here. He sends his regards to you and your boy. He hasn't forgotten about you. And Barry's dad is just like, hey, don't you ever threaten my family, or I swear to God. So they get into a little bit of a fight. A guard separates him named Elijah. He's like, hey, look, I know that you don't belong here with all these superpowered guys, but I can't keep running interference for you. You gotta stop picking fights. And he's like, I never asked you to. Get out of here, Elijah. So he goes back to his cell, which he shares with Mogul, Black Mold, and Girder. And he's like, look, something's happened. I'm gonna need the help of your supervillain names. So Barry goes back to work. He's doing whatever, blood splatter, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, hey, I got this evidence ready on the Decker case, all this stuff. By the way, Captain Darrow, I've got a lead on my dad. And he's like, okay, Barry, I don't doubt that, but you also did just go through a tragic breakup and you have to move in with your director's boyfriend. So, like, are you sure you're not just grasping for something familiar here and hoping that, like, you can get some semblance of normalcy in your life? And he's like, no. Pshaw. And then someone comes in and says, hey, there's a jewelry heist in progress. Some superpowered, he's got armor. Maybe he's all armor. That's all we've got. So at that point, Barry's like, all right, I'm on my way. So he transforms into Flash, runs out. We just get the intro to the book again. He comes up and says, you mess with the Flash, you mess with all of us. And he gets punched in the face because he sees at the corner of his eye in a reflection Professor Zoom. And he's like, what in the hell was that? Anyway, I can take care of this guy, no problem. So he runs circles around the guy, draining all the air out. And he passes out and falls down. And as he's down on the ground, Flash looks back at the mirror. And seemingly he doesn't see Zoom again, but Zoom still sees him. And we go back to Iron Heights. And Barry's dad, I wish I knew his name. They just call him Alan, which obviously is the last name. But Barry's dad is like, all right, we all know the plan. Sounds good. And then he fakes a heart attack. He falls down on the ground. Guard gets called in. It's Elijah. And as soon as he opens up the door, Girder grabs hold of him, and Barry's dad gets up and says, sorry, I got a boat to catch. Henry, that's his name, Henry Allen. So they all make their way past some sewers, past some guard gates, stuff like that. And I guess they were threatening Elijah with his family or whatever, but they were never going to do anything about that. So they knock out Elijah and they go to steal a police boat. Girder just has to tank some bullets, and he's very upset about that. He's like, yeah, everyone just thinks I can tank these bullets, but like they really sting. And nobody ever asked me if I want to do that. And they're like, are you done whining? He's like, yeah, I'm done whining. So they get on the boat, and Henry's like, all right, I'm going to warn you. That was the easy part. Everything from here on out is going to get harder, but nobody threatens my son. And we see him standing on the bow of the boat, the stern of the boat, as there's lightning striking behind him, all dramatic like. All right, so I'll be 100% honest. It's been 2 months since issue 40 because of Convergence. I don't remember how he got the name Thawne. I don't remember how that was provided to him. Maybe it was something in like the alternate Speed Force. Either way, I think it's dicey. I'm not going to say it's bad, because I don't think it is yet. I think that there is potential here, but I think it's dicey to have Henry Allen know about Thawne or Reverse Flash or Professor Zoom, whatever his name is, beforehand. That seems very much a recipe for we're retconning something a bit too hard and it's just not going to work out. So I'm a bit iffy on it as it stands now. I don't have confirmation that's what's going to happen, so I'm trying to remain unbiased here, but it just seems like that's the direction we're headed down. So I'm going to say that this is a 7. I will say that a lot of that is art. I'm still not a fan of Brett Booth's art, and it's just not working for me here either. But like, I think a 7 is fair for my little hesitancy of, I don't trust this yet. Please do something to make me trust it before it gets too deep. But yeah, it's a 7 for now. Gotham by Midnight number 6, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Juan Ferreyra. But first we've got the Convergence sneak peek that came out beforehand, and we've basically just got narration by Corrigan, him saying like, yeah, Gotham sucks. Like, after everything that we went through in that previous arc, like, it's all really, really bad, but it's on borrowed time already, and we are not looking like we're going to get any better. And we see that there is some sort of mass casualty scene where there's an explosion of green fire, but when the cops arrive, there's scorch marks, but no sign of a fire elsewhere. People get chopped up, but there's no shrapnel. And we see Jim Gordon, Batman, is on a rooftop kind of directing the scene. He's like, oh, I'm sensing some kind of energy buildup. Don't touch the bodies. But one cop already has gotten a bit too close. And then all of the bodies in the area become zombies. And as they're all up, we see that Jim Gordon is meeting with Corrigan as Batman, and he's like, look, it's bad out there. Can you please, as Corrigan, like, you've got your supernatural thing, we've got the midnight shift, can your team stop what's going on out there? And he's like, yeah, no, totally. We've got undead repellent and our holy water vaccines. And Gordon's like, I can't tell if you're joking or not. And he's like, yes, I am joking. But like, yeah, I get it. You're a little bit stressed right now. Batman's freaking out. That's cause for concern. I'll go ahead. I'll move in. So we get a breakdown of the team, just reminders of who everybody is. And of course, that Sister Justine died previously to this. And as the zombie horde approaches the center of Gotham, Corrigan and his team is standing there saying, like, you've all got 10 seconds to leave the bodies, and yeah, you know what, screw it, you're all under arrest. And then we see they're all unloading their guns, and Corrigan's unloading the power of the Spectre. So just a little glimpse ahead into a story that we'll probably never actually get pay up on, but now you know what Midnight Shift's all about. So we open up this issue with the funeral of Sister Justine, and she's being laid to rest, and immediately Corrigan's like, I hate funerals. It's such a waste of time. We're all just standing here, and it's like awful. And people are just like, okay, maybe be a little bit more sensitive, buddy. Like, she died protecting the city and whatnot. And just like, yeah, well, we're all just going to go get a drink and raise that in honor. That's a good ceremony. So they immediately get a call from the Powers Corporation saying, hey, we've got something supernatural. We need Ghostbuster style up on this. And it's like, okay, first off, how did they get our number? But second off, Corrigan has a vision of a clock with a blood stain across it. He's like, all right, well, that's something. So before they go, the team needs to talk for a minute. So immediately they flag down Corrigan. They're like, hey, the Spectre said he was going to kill us all. Maybe you want to fill us in what that's about? And he's like, yeah, I'm the spirit of divine justice, or the Spectre is. Like, if you guys have any sins, it's going to try to kill you more or less. Don't worry about it. That's the future problem. And then they talk about whether or not he should even be in town, because he's basically just carrying a nuke around inside of him. And he's like, I can't leave. It'll always manage to bring me back. The Spectre just has that ability. Don't worry about it. And then they say internal affairs is still looking into them. They're going to need a lawyer, and they're going to need to figure out what their next move is here. And then Corrigan's like, okay, also, as long as we're getting stuff out in the open, Drake, you've got a power that when you scream, people die. It's not a coincidence. You have fairy blood in you. Anytime that you scream, it's the same as like an old woman like pointing her finger and goes, ah, and then that person dies. Same sort of thing happens with you. However, the question is, does the scream cause the death, or does the death cause the scream? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, whatever. Either way, we can figure it out. So we get one glimpse over to Dr. Tarr, the Mad Scientist character, who was kind of friends with Justine. He's inside the church, and he's just tearing apart God. He's just like, I don't know what's worse, the fact that you might exist and you let this happen, or the fact that she believed that you exist and you just don't, and she was all for nothing. Like, screw this. If you exist, you suck. So we see Corrigan and Drake go over to the Powers Company, and they're showing off that they got a new watch coming out, and it's going to connect with everything. It's super highly conductive, and they're about to hand out free samples to the team, and they're like, no, we shouldn't be wearing that. Don't worry about it. So he describes, yeah, all right, we had a ghost pop up, and it's this horrible apparition with blood red fingers and a bloody spine, and it just yells out, all hands. And one of the employees there, he started choking, and when they brought him into the ER, they pulled out a chunk of human heart that was inside of his throat. So that's messed up. But regardless, they're like, okay, and you have no idea why this ghost would appear? And he's just like, no, you're a detective. That's why we called you. So immediately Corrigan's like, all right, well, there's a sin around here, because I can feel the Spectre moving up inside of me. So did anybody in here die recently? And the guy's like, And by the way, he looks exactly like the health inspector guy from Ghostbusters. I cannot overstate that enough. But he's like, oh, would someone dying be a problem? I mean, I don't see how that would, it's like a pest problem, right? You just exterminate. You don't need the wise, right? And he's like, okay, that's basically a yes. You're basically telling me that, but whatever, we'll figure it out on our own. So we cut back over to Rook talking to Dr. Tarr, and he's just basically saying the more of like, we're going to need a lawyer, they're coming down hard here, and like, we need to do all that. And as Tarr's doing investigations on this black lotus flower that's been showing up everywhere, Rook's basically like, I have a feeling you're just pretending. Like, this whole mad scientist routine is just for us, and then you go home and like watch baseball and drink a beer. And he's just like, what? No, that's not me at all. So back over at the other place, we see that the guy owns up and says that there was actually a death on the job, and they unveil his desk, and it turns out that he had a stroke while working on this latest project, and it was totally natural, no foul play. He just died of natural causes. But then Corrigan puts his hand on his chest. He's like, oh yeah, this is our guy. He wants to kill somebody here, no doubt. So Drake takes the CEO guy out of the room and is just like, all right, we're going to need to see some files on this guy. We get a beautiful 2-page 9-panel grid where Tarr is not only doing investigations on the Lotus, he cuts off a bit of it to look under the microscope, and you see it just immediately regrow and grow bigger than before as well. We also see a empty baggie that drugs were once in being found inside the desk. And when Drake points that out to the person, just like, I have no idea what that is. We cleaned out the desk. I have no idea how that even got there. And he's like, yeah, totally. I can't imagine why. And then Corrigan looks up at the clock on the wall, and he's like, oh, wait a minute. That's the clock I saw in my vision. It's happening. And then all of a sudden, blood starts gushing out from the floors. So Ghost shows up again. He starts trying to attack the CEO, says all hands once more. Corrigan manages to get him out of the way. And Drake's like, okay, it's a ghost. I just need to talk to it. It's a person. It's trying to get at rest. So it holds up the drugs, the druggie bag, and says like, hey, George, you were the guy who had the stroke. What does all hands means? What's that? And Corrigan talks to CEO like, you better fess up, man. Whatever it is, whatever he's actually here for, tell us what's up, or else you're going to see the fury of God. But at that point, the ghost says, all right, screw it. I'm going after the CEO guy. He starts charging at it, and the CEO guy owns up and says, all hands was the last thing I said to him. That was the very last thing. And we see him giving a pep talk to the guy saying, hey, we're in crunch time. We need you to work overtime. All hands on deck. And the guy says, I've already been working for days. I haven't slept. I'm literally completely exhausted. And the CEO pulls out a little baggie of speed and says, here you go. This will keep you going. Don't worry about it. All hands, return on investment. So as he confesses, he's like, oh, yeah, so you gave him drugs and he had a stroke and that's what happened, right? And he's like, yes, it was me. We covered it up. We didn't want anyone knowing that I gave him drugs. It was all me. And the ghost disappears for a moment. And Corrigan's like, wow, I didn't actually expect you to fess up. Most people would take that stuff to their grave. But yeah, all right, so be it. And he's like, all right, so the spirits is gone? He's like, no, he's going to be back almost immediately. But we just gave you a little bit of a respite here. The payout that his family would have gotten because of your negligence still needs to be paid out. That's what's going to make him whole here, because you're robbing him of that. You do that and it's going to be fine. And he's like, oh, cool. Oh, yeah, I'll totally do that. No problem. And then they also clear up that the guy who was choking on the piece of heart was someone who witnessed the forged documents in the cover-up. So the CEO guy's like, awesome. Well, you guys are really good at your job. How would you like to work for us? We could take you on retainer and we can monetize the crap out of you guys. And he's just like, all right, well, I wasn't going to arrest you because we just care about the ghost part, but you're also being a prick. And he's like, sorry, yeah, I'll go pay out. So the Drake and Corrigan go out into the car. And Drake's like, hey, how did they know to call us? We're not exactly listed in the yellow pages. And he's like, maybe word's getting out, but for some reason he thought we were exterminators, and that's not what we do. So, and then she's like, all right, well, if we get out anymore, maybe that's a problem because we're kind of dangerous on our own, and we've got our own secrets. Are we going to be able to keep all those? But we don't get an answer as we cut back over to the newly introduced lawyer character who's trying to cover their asses from internal affairs. Her name is Kate Spencer. She's brought in by Rook, and she basically makes it clear, hey, someone way high up is gunning for you. Someone really wants to shut this team down. And in this city, it could be corrupt cops, could be a supervillain, who knows? But you better watch your backs. And we cut away from them arguing as we see the Lotus is growing, almost out of the jar it's being kept in. So yeah, no, this has constantly been a story of pretty much a book of individualized stories. The chapters are kind of standalone on their own right, but it's connecting into this larger theme, the bigger mystery going on. So I'm down for it. It still looks good. I think I would have liked a little bit more on mourning for Sister Justine, or even if it's just one character. Maybe Dr. Tarr could have gone just a little bit longer, but if it comes back up later, it comes back up. I don't think it will. It doesn't feel like it will, but we'll see. I'm gonna say this one though is I'll say 8. Honestly, I really enjoyed this one. The art style on the ghost was also fantastic. So yeah, really enjoying Gotham by Midnight. Teen Titans number 9, written by Will Pfeifer, art by Kenneth Rocafort. So first we got the sneak peek, which is pretty easy to explain, all things considered. We've got a little fight scene of Cassie in a Star Labs training facility after she left the rest of the Titans, following the Superboy being covered for killing a bunch of people. And we see her fighting against Kid Flash, who is definitely the Kid Flash that we knew before, Guardian, who's just got a shield, and then is about to fight against Clarion before she gets a call on her phone from Tim Drake. And it's just like, all right, you want to talk? Let's talk. And it's essentially 7 straight pages of, I can't join back on the Titans because I severely disagree with you taking in Connell. He is a murderer, and we should have seen that rage inside him to begin with. And Tim making the point of, he's our friend, we owe it to him, and he definitely did not do those things. So all the while, Manchester Black is triangulating, using positions to figure out where Robin is, and even Cassie points it out, and he's like, don't worry about it. Manchester Black is smart, but he ain't that smart. So they get a lock on the address as they continue their conversation. They send in a team to teleport to Youngstown, Ohio, which is where they've got it locked in on. And then the moment that the phone call ends, we see that they've already teleported. They've been there, but wouldn't you know it, he's misdirecting the call. And it's just the words, better luck next time, written on the wall. So Tim is currently in Chicago along with the rest of the Titans and says, all right, she's no longer on the team. She's no longer a Titan. So we cut out into the issue proper, and Tim and the Durlin, who's joined the team, who is going by the codename Chimera, they are doing some modifications to some cell towers in order to get some signals to make sure that if they are being followed, if anything's going on, then they're going to get an alert for it. And Chimera is doing some shapeshifting into Tim because she's normally afraid of heights, but when she's in Tim's form, then all of a sudden that fades away. And they're talking about how, yeah, Connor's not used to being so bottled up. So he's going out and he's flying about the town, and nobody's going to notice because they're going to think it's just airplane lights around O'Hare, but it's good to let him blow off some steam if necessary. And they also say, okay, well, how's the media doing? And they show that every single channel is still running basically 24-hour coverage on, and the Superboy is still out there, the mass murderer and all that sort of stuff. So we then see what are the other Titans up to. They have to keep a low profile so nobody knows they're in Chicago. And Beast Boy has taken the form of a parrot on Bunker's shoulder, and he's like, this is not covert. You are not covert right now. He's like, what are you talking about? Parrots are green. Parrots talk. This is totally normal. And then two people come up like, hey, are you guys the Titans? And he's like, yeah, great. Awesome. They're like, no, we're cool. We're cool. We love you guys. Like, we're not angry at you for covering for whatever, but like, we love Raven's tribute band. Can you sign some CDs and stuff like that? And immediately more and more people start coming up. And it seems like they're all fans of the Titans. It's not really a big deal. However, back at Star Labs, we see that they're trying to figure out where the Titans are located. They don't really have an idea at this point, but Manchester Black is sure that with the current makeup of the team, including Superboy, something's going to give. Something's going to crack, and they're going to give themselves away. So as the crowd grows, Raven is growing a bit more and more nauseous and freaking out because just too many people, too many thoughts, she can't block them out. And then all of a sudden the crowd shuffles around and a woman gets knocked onto some train tracks as a train is approaching. Beast Boy turns into a cheetah, but fat lot that'll do trying to navigate through a crowd. Bunker tries to use his bricks to get there, but he doesn't have the angle either. And as the train is about to hit this woman, in comes Superboy, who stops the train entirely in a big light show. And he saves the woman, drops her back down on the path, and everyone's like, oh God, that's Superboy. Are you going to kill us? You're going to kill us, aren't you? And he's like, what? No, I saved her. You saw me save her. Also, I didn't kill anybody. It's no big deal. And then a cop shows up and says, geez, hey, I'm going to need backup here. We got immediate assistance. And he pulls a gun out on Superboy. And Superboy's like, I just saved her, bro. And so he zaps the gun out of the guy's hand. And that's where everything goes to hell. Robin gets the ping, like, all right, something's happening. Manchester Black gets the ping, and it's like, cool. Get the team ready. We're sending them over to Chicago. So we cut into the training room where Wonder Girl and Power Girl are fighting, and Power Girl's still just like, I'm still getting into the groove of things. I'm not sure I'm 100% there, but, whatever. And Manchester Black comes in and says, all right, get ready, we're going in, we're doing this now. Kid Flash shows up and says, yeah, Kid Flash will meet you there, he's just going to run it. Everyone else is teleporting, and we see there's Clarion, there's Guardian, and there's also a Indigo Tribe Lantern who does not get a name or any sort of introduction, but is just hanging around. So Bunker has now set up a wall between the crowd and the rest of the Titans because Raven's just having a panic attack. Robin's basically like, is Raven going to be able to teleport you guys out? And it's just like, nah, that ain't going to happen. She's in bad shape. We don't know how we're going to get out of here. It's not going to be good for anybody. And then Superboy just picks up Raven and Beast Boy and says, I'll get us out of here, don't worry. So Kid Flash they teleport in. they've already missed the rest of the team. Kid Flash does some napkin math, and it's just like, okay, so however many miles an hour, blah, 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 they should be at this location. And he gets Clarion to teleport the rest of the team over to that location, figure out where they're at. Meanwhile, Superboy's flying at Mach speeds over to the penthouse. He manages to arrive at Mach 2 and just full stops inside the penthouse, which causes tons of damage. Robin's like, what the hell did you do? He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was saving the young woman and then getting our team out of here because the crowd was going to tear us apart. And so they start bickering. Raven's finally just like, shut up. Everyone shut up. They're here. And outside the door, we see the team is teleported in. And Cassie's like, okay, everyone take it slow. Kid Flash wants to get in there and have some words with Robin. We're not here for that. We're here for Superboy. These guys are my friends, and if we can avoid violence, we're going to do that. And she punches down the door and walks in and says, all right, I'm going to say this once. Hand over Superboy. And then that's the whole of the issue. It looks great. Rockfort's art's always good. Okay, it's usually good. It's good here. I'll say that much. I like the plot. I'll say that much. I like the idea of we have split the Titans up. There is a civil war going on here, and we have to split into two different teams, and it's all based around whether or not Superboy did this. One side has to clear his name. The other side is just trying to do what they think is right. It's not implicitly clear which side is right or wrong, except that one of them is working for Manchester Black, which screams that they're on the wrong side, but regardless, I like all that. Downsides. Kid Flash. They're just pretending like him being here is totally normal. They even have a speech bubble saying, oh, I don't even know why I came back to this century. Like, bro, you were in super jail. What in the hell are you talking about? You just came back? What, of your own volition? Nah, man. You need to explain that. You need to tell us how you got here. I'm hoping they will, but so far, like, this has been a full issue with numerous speech bubbles by Flash, and at no point did anyone say, hey, what the hell are you doing here, bro? The other ones I don't care about. I would like a little bit more on those Indigo Tribe, but they haven't done any introduction, so I'm sure we'll get that eventually. Yeah, beyond that, it's fine enough for what it is. I'm hoping that it gets a little bit better, but it's not awful. I'm going to say a flat 7. It's kind of just where I'm feeling it. So we'll see what goes on from that point, but it's exactly what Teen Titans has been for the past 8 issues. It's just following that same trajectory. Justice League 3001, number 1, written by Keith Giffen and J.N.D. Mateus, art by Howard Porter. But first, we have a sneak peek where I guess it's set slightly ahead. I honestly don't think it makes a difference, but we see we're on some fancy-ass restaurant planet, and Superman has gone out dressed with the Clark Kent disguise, not because he wants to blend in, but because he wants to point out that it's a stupid disguise, and there's no way that it should ever possibly work, and yet nobody is actually noticing that he's Superman, or if they do, they just don't care. And we see this as a double date. Superman is going out with Terry, the Flash, whereas Bruce is going out with Aerial Masters, and as they're all going out here, Bruce is basically just chomping down on food as everyone else is talking. They're like, dude, are you good? And he's like, do you understand what the food here costs? Like, it's fantastic. It's amazing. I'm not going to let this go to waste. And as he's chastised for not joining in on the conversation, he basically dresses down all of them, saying like, Clark is overcompensating because he's just a giant blowhard and he's on this date with Terry. It's his first date with Terry, and Terry is very much having an anxiety attack over there. And she's like, oh, he's right, I'm out. And she just bolts to the bathroom, but she bolts so fast that her dress comes off. So Clark's like, I'll go and talk to her. And Ariel says, no, you will not. I'm going to go talk to her woman to woman. And she kind of chastises Clark and Bruce simultaneously leave. So Ariel goes into the bathroom and he's basically just saying like, hey, come on out, get out of there, kid. You gotta, you know, I've been a little distant these past few months, I understand, but I am still your friend. And, you know, it's I understand you've never been on a date before, but it doesn't take the world's greatest detective to see that you're anxious about more than just it being a date. So come on out here and we'll get through it. And we see, as she's putting her dress back on, one of the waiters comes up and says, there's a little situation at your table. And they look over and see Wonder Woman is currently strangling Clark, along with a new Green Lantern, who is Guy Gardner, but in a female body. I'll get to it. So, Diana's trying to choke out Clark. Apparently, the glasses he stole for his Clark outfit, it came from the old, our current version of Wonder Woman. When she would become Diana Prince, she put on the glasses, and he's like, I didn't realize you had this stupid disguise as well. And Wonder Woman just backhands Clark, knocks him clean across the restaurant, and we basically just have more arguing between everybody. Not much is really said here at the beginning, but they do point out that it's weird because Guy Gardner recognizes that he has the mind of old Guy. He recognizes that he should be a guy, but he's in a woman's body. They dance around the trans thing for a minute. I will not be getting into it because I don't think the book handles it well, but they, have Ariel basically storm out and saying, screw all of you, I'm getting drunk, none of you are allowed to come with. And as everybody has already evacuated the restaurant because of their super fight going on, everyone else just sits down at the table and enjoys the food. And Bruce is like, see, I told you, this stuff is great. So that's the sneak peek alone. Sprinting through the rest of the issue, we see that Ariel Masters is not actually Ariel Masters. The previous issue left off with evil Lois Lane from the future taking over as Ariel. So apparently it's been months of that now. And she's like, God, I keep on sending the Justice League out on more and more dangerous missions, and they keep on coming back alive. What is it going to take to kill these assholes? So at that point, we cut over to a planet that is controlled by Starro, and we see that the Justice League has come across a bunch of dead bodies, and it's like more so than even Wonder Woman is comfortable with. And there's a representative for Starro there saying, hey, we took over this planet fair and square. Like, we actually went through legal channels for legalized slavery here. There is nothing wrong with us enslaving these people from a legal standpoint, so you don't have any ground to stand on. All these people that were going up against us, they were rebellion, and we had our legal right to put them down. And Guy Gardner flies off and is just like, screw that, I don't like that idea, I'm going to the bureaucrats to see what can be done here. So meanwhile, they kind of just talk more to this Starro representative, and the Starro representative is like, maybe you should leave the planet. We're not going to absorb you because you guys are all messed up in like 50 different ways, but we might just annihilate you if you try to get in the way of any of this. And they get, for people who are just jumping in on the 3001 storyline, didn't read 3000, they explain how the heroes are here, the DNA, blah, blah, taking over bodies. Doesn't really matter. But as they're standing here, Diana's basically like, look, these people were heroes. They fought for a cause they believe in. They should at least have a warrior's death, cremation or something like that. And the Starro step in saying, no, we're going to use them as fuel and food. And immediately Diana's about to throw punches, and Flash has to get in the middle and be like, no, don't do that. So as the rest of the team goes and walks off, Superman does a thing where he wants to be field commander because Ariel's not coming out on these missions anymore. And Batman's like, you will never be field commander. I would never allow that to happen. We are equals when we're out here. And that is literally it. Also, we probably shouldn't have let Guy go off on her own, his own, their own, whatever. So we then cut over to the bureaucrat planet where Guy is left sitting for multiple hours. Finally, they get up and it's just like, hey, what's the holdup? And the person behind the desk says, oh, we're very busy. And Guy looks around. There's no one else there. So they just punch through a window, grab hold of the bureaucrat and say, how about you let me look around for a while? So then we cut over to Ice and Fire. If you remember, Fire was enslaved by Etrigan and was a demon for a while. Ice saved her. And it's just a long thing of whether or not Fire has completely given up her demonic ways, whether or not Ice is able to put her fortress of ice behind her. They both agree to do it for each other, and Fire literally just spends 2 panels talking about Etrigan's dick. We then see them get out of the portal and say, hey, yeah, maybe we should meet back up with Booster and Blue Beetle, the JLI, get back together again. And they posit that they should be wiser and nobler with age, but then they remember they were kept in suspended animation, so they are just as dumb as they were to begin with. We then see Guy manages to threaten an employee to forge documents to say that the takeover by Starro was illegal, so they can go beat up Starro anyway. It works, so that's what Guy's got going on. Meanwhile, Lois, posing as Ariel, hears from one of the bureaucrats who guy was beating up and says like, hey, there's going to be a major conflict on this planet if this is allowed to go through. You might want to go control the Justice League. And Lois is like, yeah, no, totally. I'll definitely stop them. Click. I'm not going to stop them, though. Oh, I hope that Starro at least manages to kill a couple of them. There's this little robot pal who's like, but we can't let the Justice League get hurt. And then Lois just shuts it off. We then see Lois calls up Sinestro and says, hey, get ready to fight. They're going to be weak in a few hours. We got to be ready to go. And Sinestro's like, yeah, about that. I'm getting laid, so call you back. We then cut over to Bruce and Terry, who are out talking. And Terry's like, hey, do you hate me because I was technically the person who brought you back to life? And he's like, no, because as much as it's weird, it's not inherently bad. And also, you're not the same person you were because you got mixed with Barry Allen's DNA. So then Guy shows up and says, hey, I brought the paperwork that says that this was illegal. And he's like, is this actually illegal? And he's just like, I have just 20 questions. Let's go kick Starro's ass. And then as Guy says that, it turns out it was broadcast to the whole planet. And now all the Starros on this planet recognize that there's going to be a fight. And that's the issue. Okay. It is exactly the same as Justice League 3000. It is a continuation of the storyline. I didn't expect it not to be. I mean, even this trade has 2 issues of Justice League 3000 before 3001 starts. So, like, it's the same story. I'm torn on Lois being Ariel. I mean, I'm sure it's a fine enough excuse. You just say, like, oh, yeah, she took over the role or whatever. But, like, they do make the point of saying that they're all good friends with Ariel, and yet nobody has noticed it. And, like, the robot points out, like, why haven't they noticed that? And it's like, because they're incompetent. They're stupid. But I'm like, Bruce should have noticed, at the very least. I hope we get something like that. Oh, I forgot. There is actually one more page in this book. A meteor or something comes down to, I think, Earth. Maybe it's the other planet. They're all currently on the Camelot planet. But Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, seemingly the original. That's a thing. Anyway, yeah, I feel like this one's kind of the definition of a low 7 in my book. It's fine. I think there are people who do genuinely like it, but it does feel so different and off the wall from everything else that it just kind of is hard to grade on the same scale. So I'll say 7. I think I like it. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this June 24th, 2015. And by the way, it's kind of weird for me to say this because by the time that an audio listener, someone who listens via the audio feeds, because this is available on audio feeds and all your major podcasting sites, by the time that someone on that side of things hears this, hopefully the problem will be fixed. But currently, as I am recording this, we are way behind on audio uploads, and that is because a bit of a problem with data caps. It's a long story, as part of me is just laziness, but I am trying to catch up. I hopefully will get caught up. Just be aware, if you're listening to this, I might not be caught up yet, and you can get more up-to-date stuff, this stuff that actually is exactly 10 years ago, over on YouTube, which is where I assume most of you are watching this. I don't actually have any numbers for my audio feed. Whoever set up like RSS feeds and podcasts and stuff like that, they didn't really build that in mind to show live stat tracking, but if you listen to this via audio feed, please reach out. Let me know. I would love to know how many people are actually listening to it via that. Anyway, completely skipping everything else that I just said there because most people have already clicked off the video. Let's talk about the comics we have coming up next week. Next week, we have, in no particular order here, Batmite, Batman Beyond, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Bizarro, Green Lantern, Omega Men, Green Arrow, Lobo, and Midnighter. And I can tell you out of all that, Omega Men. I could not care less about the rest, comparatively. I mean, I'm sure they're fine. I don't think they're going to be like awful comics, except for maybe Batmite. That one's honestly a really tricky one for me, but Omega Men's going to be the standout. I love that book. That book's fantastic. Anyway, all that said and done, if you have any comments that you would like to share on any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up in the comments down beneath the YouTube video if that's how you're watching, or if you are one of the audio fans listening like 2 months from now, you can go ahead and check out the description or the show notes or whatever you want to call them. There are links to a Patreon, a subreddit, a Discord, all these other places that you can share your thoughts, and I can promptly ignore them. I won't, but I can. And that's what's important. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, listening, however you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week and interact positively with this episode. It's 199. You don't want to go into 200 making me feel sad, do you? Because I do take it personally. Jeff, I see you giving me poor reviews. Don't think I don't notice. There is no Jeff, but I'm sure there will be now. Thank you very much once again. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.